right. Welcome to the Deploy Securely podcast. I'm Walter Haydock, the founder of StackAware, and I am again joined by Steve Dufour, the Chief Security and Privacy Officer at Embold Health. Thanks for joining me, Steve.
Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
So we've got a couple topics that we want to tackle today. The first one is going to be the AI action plan that the White House just released. The second one will be a research paper about model context protocol and tool squatting and some potential mitigations to that risk. We'll also talk about kind of a higher level piece with respect to the opportunities available to recent college graduates and the impacts that generative AI is having on those opportunities. And then we may have a bonus topic at the end if we have enough time. That sound good for you, Steve?
Works for me. Let's do this.
All right. So AI action plan. This is something that the Trump administration released last month, and it has three pillars to it, which are kind of the table contents. We're going to talk through some of the key pieces in there as they relate to AI security and governance. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was that from a commercial perspective, there's a requirement that a variety of federal agencies, but the Office of Management and Budget and also the Federal Trade Commission are looking into getting rid of red tape, as the action plan calls it, with respect to AI development. And I thought something that was interesting is that it directs the FTC to review any enforcement actions to make sure that they're not hampering AI development. So I think there's some potential implications for competitiveness and antitrust. So what do you think about that, Steve?
Yeah, the red tape and onerous regulation, there are this specific wording. Yeah, it's pretty concerning. So from a I guess a negative outcome perspective, right? They're removing the red tape, they're removing the regulation, trying to drive innovation forward, and really leaving it to I guess the companies to decide what's best. Not sure if I really agree with that, because there has to be some overarching regulation, right? Like you shall not do this, right? And then we adhere to it through compliance. I feel it's pretty risky, just from a people perspective. Forget about like United States versus the rest of the world type of thing. It's just from a people perspective, there's so many threats out there, and I think you and I talked about it before, where like we always talk about like, oh, technology is moving so fast, like businesses are having a hard time keeping up with it. Like, okay, what about just the normal person, down the street, right? Your admin worker, your finance worker, and things like that. How are we expecting them to keep up with this surge in technology? And I think that's one of the things that where the government should potentially step in, because if there's this AI arms race, right, that means everybody's like pushing forward, speed of light type of thing. Like we got to go to the market faster and faster. Um, the typical person doesn't necessarily know those negative outcomes that potentially could happen, either by directly or indirectly employing AI in their everyday life.
Yeah, I definitely think there are risks of externalities, to use the economic term. And when you roll back regulation, I think we already saw that attempted in a big way, and not to overuse the term, but in the big beautiful bill where the Senate tried to ban state level AI regulation for 10 years. That didn't end up passing. So I think at the federal level, we're going to see some what I would call restraint or potentially abdication of responsibility. And at the state level, there's going to be a lot of activity to regulate artificial intelligence. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
I think one of your posts mentioned Colorado. as far as
Yeah.
like the state level AI regulation, like is that a good example of what we might be able to see from other? I think Texas had one too. Like I'm not too in tune with like the state level regulation. Like, is Colorado where it's at? Like,
Colorado took a very heavy approach, in my opinion, that was similar to the European Union AI Act. And they created the tiering system of high risk AI systems and applied a bunch of requirements to them. Now, Texas took a different approach and didn't take the tiered system, and they basically just banned outright certain types of uses for AI that I think everyone agrees should be banned. But then they didn't really create the complex compliance regime that Colorado did, which I think is in keeping with Texas's goal of fostering a business friendly environment. So that's my view. So some other things I think that were in the order. There's some stuff on skill development, which I think was good. That's definitely appropriate. But also there were some words about encouraging open source and open weight AI. And the report says that some organizations have sensitive data they can't send to closed source model providers, which is potentially true. And the question is, organizations that are running open source models, are they able to apply the same degree of security configurations and vulnerability patching and things like that as SaaS providers? I think it really depends. In some cases, for small and medium businesses, SaaS is going to be the way to go. But for bigger organizations that have more mature ways of doing business, have more established processes, than potentially running an open source model in their own infrastructure as a service offering might be the way to go. But it's a balance. There's no right answer. It just all depends on your business security and compliance requirements.
yeah, and what you just described right there is third party risk management, right? Like we got an open source versus closed source product, right? And so I really hope that companies out there, let's just say they're at a certain level of maturity, right? Take this opportunity to nail down their third party risk management system. Like do the vendor review. Where's the data coming in? Where's the data going out? What's the classification of it? As far as like strategy goes, right? Where does this fall into our particular product strategy, or let's just say revenue strategy? Hey, it might actually be an operational strategy and not tied directly to revenue, right? So taking into account all of those things really, I guess, puts an emphasis on AI management systems, right? Like ISO 42001. You don't necessarily have to subscribe to that to create your third-party risk management, but it does give a good framework for managing AI within your enterprise, whether you be a small business or a large entity.
Yeah, I think having a cohesive and coherent approach to risk management across all your information systems is really key. And just because an organization has AI in its name doesn't necessarily change the way that you're measuring risk. So, like you said, looking at those data classifications, business impact, and making decisions that way, I think that's the way to go. One other thing in here that I thought was super interesting was let me find the exact wording. It was on some of the export control measures. So the report talks a lot about mitigating the impact of Chinese AI development and making sure that frontier models are free of ideological bias from a specifically Chinese perspective. But one thing that I didn't fully understand and I think has some interesting implications was this sentence that says, led by these agencies, explore leveraging new and existing location verification features on advanced AI compute to ensure that the chips are not in countries of concern. So, first of all, do hardware chips know where they are? Second of all, if so, who are they telling? And then third of all, what are they doing with that information? So if you move a AI chip into a restricted country, does it just go boo and shut down? I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of that. I didn't know that there was, location aware hardware. Obviously there's Find My iPhone and stuff like that, but I'm talking from like the microprocessor perspective. I did not know that individual pieces of hardware could sense where they were, and I'd be really interested to know in terms of what they're doing with that information.
Yeah, we need somebody on the stream that does firmware, right? They'll be able to
Yeah,
answer it. And it probably has to
yeah.
do with the AI chip has AI enabled to make that determination, right? It's very cyclical in nature.
AIception, just running AI within
Yeah.
the AI. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting document. It's clearly has a political objective to it, and I would say that everything that the government does is necessarily political because that's kind of how democracy works. And I don't use the word political to necessarily mean something bad. It just means something that politicians are directing, and if politicians are directing it, it's political by definition. So there's some certain things that the Trump administration is directing in terms of the NIST AI risk management framework, removing references to climate change and things like that. And those are certainly political decisions. But putting those in the first place were also political decisions. I'm not using the word political to mean bad. I'm just saying it was directed by political leadership. And in America, if politicians aren't making the rules, then who is, would be my question. Uh, yeah.
And I would invite anybody that's listening to the stream or the recorded version of it to don't look at this as an opportunity to do whatever you want. It's an opportunity for you and your company to create the AI framework, right? Or adopt one, create the standards for your company to determine what is satisfactory, what is not, and create that governance structure, right? Like it really is an opportunity to, let's just say, do the right thing, so so to speak, document it, make it as part of your story, right? Like in Bold Health, we told people flat out, like we were not first to market, right? But we were also not the first to market and fail, right? Like our AI driven products are very successful because we did take our time, right? And they're part of our revenue streams. The team led by Mark Blackham at Inbold Health is very proud of their accomplishments regarding AI.
And I think you should be. Definitely think you should be. A lot of great stuff there. I'll drop a link to the case study in this podcast. All right, so moving on in terms of topics, the next one was the research paper on MCP security vulnerabilities and mitigation. So, Steve, I'll let you drive
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. Let me paste that link into the chat real quick. The summary is there are agents out there that do a particular task. We're talking about AI agents, right? So whenever you create a product that does a specific thing, there are bad actors out there. They're going to take advantage of whatever framework you subscribe to for your agents. So you have company one, company two, agent two, talking to one another and potentially exchanging data. Um, and re what's the term? Posywit. The purpose of something is what it does, right? So like you end up creating an agent that does a particular task on your behalf or your company's behalf. It might be part of your strategy or your revenue stream or whatever it happens to be. And it has to communicate with the external world in some way, shape, or form. So that leaves the opportunity for these bad actors. I think the article labeled it as tool squatting, right? And so the tool squatters will pretend to be a particular tool that you want to communicate and do business with, right? And I really appreciate the solution. So, like, I can appreciate people bringing up issues or problems, right? And at the same time, I really love the solutions portion of it. and that is zero trust registry based. So if you have, let's say, a mature third party risk management um, process within your organization, and you have somebody either reviewing the package, reviewing the tool, the hardware, the software, whatever that product happens to be, and saying, yes, you can use that. And if you try and use it, it blocks it, for example, right? So you can follow the same approach for your AI agent. You can create a trusted registry for it to communicate with other entities. So from a third party standpoint, it really forces conversations between internal people at your organization, what they want to do, because they have to define why they why they want this particular service. Then you can document it, lay out particular risk, and then make a decision, move forward or not. But it forces a human in the loop, so to speak. I really appreciate this article because it actually had the solution. Yeah, zero trust registry based approach. Phenomenal article.
Yeah, I took a look at it earlier, and I think it was interesting that they discussed doing cryptographic verification of the individual tool sets, not just the MCP server. So I think that'll be important because, if you've got an enterprising engineer in your organization who's trying to get something done, or an enterprising AI agent that's trying to get something done, and it sees a new shiny tool that sounds like it'll be super helpful, then it might grab it and start using it for purposes that it doesn't fully understand the consequences of doing. So, absolutely agree with that. Anything else on that, Steve?
Yeah, I'm looking at it again just so I don't miss anything. Registry system framework, phenomenal. Just in time credential mechanism, phenomenal, right? You don't get access to it unless you request it, right? Type of thing. So from an AI perspective, you request access, you give it access for a certain amount of time, right? Then it expires and it can no longer do whatever it is. Let's see here. 8A MCP, central agent and tool registries, implement a measurable trust score, right? So the trust score concept isn't necessarily one of the ones where like we trust Microsoft. Takes into account the context of usage, right? So like it's like you always say, like what data is going in, what data is coming out, what's its actual purpose. So again, really appreciate the trust score being context aware. Does ISO 42001 have anything similar to what's described here? Trust scores. This is kind of in the weeds. I'm not really sure if it's applicable or not. I figured I'd ask the expert on 42001.
It's definitely applicable. ISO 42001 is very high level. It does not get into the details of how you're supposed to implement certain controls. I would say that having a registry of MCP servers, of the tools that they're using, would definitely be something that addresses several of the controls in Annex A. And from a good governance perspective, there's no way that you can use AI systems effectively if you don't know which ones you have or are supposed to have. So, certainly applicable and will certainly help you meet some of the requirements of ISO 42001.
I think you used the key word there, effective, right? So when we were creating our AI-based product, one of our scoring mechanisms had to do with effectiveness. And I would ask anybody who's still building out their AI-based system, whether it be agent-based or not, to create a scoring mechanism that judges the effectiveness of the product itself, right? And again, you can turn that and create a success story for your customers and for your company, right? Because it builds trust that you took enough care to actually create the system and the methodology to score your product before release.
Yep, it all comes back to effective quality control. Cool. So, all set on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is a research paper. It's kind of at a higher level. It's not super technical, but I think it's really important in the context of our conversations. It's called "No Country for Young Grads," and it's from the Burning Glass Institute. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, the Burning Glass Institute, and it describes how young college graduates are seeing declining prospects for white collar work because of things like generative AI that have really reshaped the way that companies do business. They also talk about the great resignation of 21 to 22 and how a lot of employers are kind of burned by that experience. So I thought it was an interesting paper from a diagnosis perspective. From a solutions perspective, they don't actually provide any solutions at all, which yeah, which I thought was interesting. And then they also say, this is not a problem of oversupply, but provide no evidence to support that. I think they kind of went in with they decided that they were going to look for a problem, which they did find, but they had pre-decided that the solution could not be, oh well, maybe we shouldn't be subsidizing college degrees at the federal level, which I get it. You can bring the hate if you want, but I think the way that the government is subsidizing bachelor's degrees makes no sense, and this trend is clearly proving that it doesn't make sense, and it never really made sense.
Yeah, I might have a potential solution for this, and 100% agree. So even the people with advanced degrees are struggling to find a job. You can have all the certifications or the jobs. AI is part of hiring workflows and sending out automated, right, denial notifications to people who apply for jobs. And that whole like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, oh, I just graduated, so I should be able to get an entry level position. But then on all the entry level positions, they want CISSP, which requires you to have X number of years experience, which means it's not entry level, right? There's a whole host of things that could be improved upon in let's just say the job market. One thing that I would invite anybody who is worried either about their job or a recent grad, do not pigeonhole yourself into a particular task or a particular industry and volunteer for everything. So what I mean by that is I have a degree in criminal justice, not necessarily part of the technology realm, not necessarily part of the specific security realm, so on and so forth, right? So if you have a degree in marketing, if you have a degree in business, if you have a degree in criminal justice, you might not end up in that particular field. You just won't. You end up having a degree. So if you end up with a job, you have a marketing degree and you end up with an HR job, or a marketing degree and you end up being like an IT admin or something like that. That's good. Like you have a job, and in the process of fulfilling your job duties, volunteer for everything. Don't say no, right? Like, no, that's not my job. Like technology moves fast, businesses move fast, and I think deep down leadership at various companies, they don't necessarily want to lay off people, right? So, but they also want to deliver, right? So, in the end, if your particular job is X, Y, and Z, and you see the need for A, B, and C, volunteer to get it, right? Like that is experience that's working in your favor, right? You don't necessarily want to be the person that only knows one thing and one thing only. You'll be the expert in that thing, but how many people are, right? So, but if you're an expert or a semi-expert in 10 things, right? Um, I can only see that working in your favor whenever it comes to the job markets.
Yeah, flexibility I think is key, and I would say, at least where I live, there is a lot of demand for skilled laborers, meaning like plumbers, carpenters, electricians, things like that. And I almost feel like there's been a drought in terms of people in those pipelines for the skilled trades that there's kind of been this push over the past, since World War II, actually, to send people to college, and unfortunately, I don't think it was super clear what all of them were supposed to do, and especially since the whole point is to have like an information processing job after college, when information processing is getting revolutionized by I think the old model is not necessarily going to work. So, I certainly have not. I am not hardcore committed that my daughter is going to go to college. That is not something that I've planted my flag on. We can talk about what types of skills she would develop there, and how it would benefit her, certainly, but it's not something I'm anchoring on. When I was growing up, that was like, you know if you didn't go to college, it was like you were completely lost in life, which was never true, but I think it's even less true now.
Yeah, and to your point, my wife and I had some work done at our house where we had to have a plumber come out, AC guy come out, and eventually we'll have an electrician come out. When I was talking to the plumber, he said there's an issue in their industry right now where they're hurting for apprentice people coming
Yeah.
in to learn the particular
Yeah.
trade. Like they'll show up, get their paycheck, and you won't ever see them again, or they're not
Oh
willing
wow.
to put in the work, right? So like I grew up in a similar fashion as you, where like information processing, you end up getting a job, right? Like behind a desk, and you might talk to people, but your job is in front of the computer. And when I talked to him about it, he said, "Yeah, I'm not worried about AI at all. Look at us out here," because we were we were in the front of my house digging a
Yeah.
hole, right?
Yeah.
To lay out some pipe, and he wasn't worried at all. So if anybody is worried about their children, it's okay to be an electrician, to be the AC HVAC guy, right? To be the plumber or whatever it happens to be, those skilled trades, right? That are in dire need for help, right? That's one of the reasons why these skilled trades cost so much, right? They are skilled, but there is a high demand for the work and a shortage in the skills, right? So I was pretty happy whenever my son mentioned that he wanted to go to electrician school. It's like, oh, that's phenomenal. Like,
Yeah.
great choice, son. Probably one of the best things he ever told me.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the trades people could probably improve the front ends of their experience. I mean, like websites and like booking links, and I mean all the key service providers for my household. You know, if I can get a text like a text message to them, if I can get a personal phone number, that's like how I get it done. Because if you try to submit a request like on a contact me form, like no one ever gets back to you. There's no way to like book an appointment online. So I think those trades will benefit by having improved technology on the front end powered by AI or not. And at the same time, there's a lot of demand, and frankly, they haven't had the need to really streamline their front ends because the demand is there. And there are plumbers where I live who say like, I'm not taking new clients. Like, sorry, I'm just not. So there's so much demand for their services, they haven't needed to really improve their intake with technology or their operations with their technology. But I think the combination of improved supply along with improved front ends will make people's lives a lot easier all around. It'll help. There are a lot of underserved people when it comes to the trades, and then there are people who don't have jobs right now. So put them together and solve the problem.
Agreed.
All right, so we might be a little bit shorter this episode, but I wanted to flag a final topic, which was the artificial intelligence underwriting company, which is a super interesting concept. And I think that insurance it's a conservative industry. It makes sense. They're trying to protect against tail end events, so they're going to be conservative. But it's good to see that there are companies emerging to help tackle the financial side of the risks posed by AI. And I mean, this is potentially apropos, but I've been thinking about it a lot. Um, if you think about it, like if you ever regulate insurance, if the government ever regulates insurance, in my opinion, that's just like wrong because insurers their job is to predict when events will happen, at what frequency, and what the impact will be. And then when the government comes in and is like, well, you can only do X, you can only do Y, like you can only pay out this much, you can only enter or exit these markets. Basically the government's like, I see your calculations, but you're wrong, and
Right.
I'm fixing. They're like, that's like a kid coming in like crayoning in on his older brother's homework and being like, well, no, it's actually this. So in AI, I actually haven't seen any proposed regulation about insurance coverage. I might be missing something, and
Having
actually, I think that's good because we need to let insurance markets develop in an organic and natural way. Because if you look at things like flood insurance in the United States, like the government subsidizes flood insurance, and that's such a ridiculous concept because the government's basically saying, so you live in an area where the financial risk of living there is X, but we're just going to reduce that risk arbitrarily and make the taxpayers pay for it. So, again, people are going to, I'm sure, gonna bring out the pitchforks for me, but those types of things completely distort the playing field, and it's good to see innovation in a space that hasn't been touched by it.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's really cool. Simply because like we have the AI action plan, right, for the government, and then on the back end, whenever negative outcomes do happen, we have the AI insurance. I'm excited for it, and I'd love to know more information. Like, is the process the same for underwriting, where you come up with the risk evaluation and potentially get discounts? Like, what's the ROI there and the value proposition for this stuff? Very, very interested. Like, would this potentially replace your existing insurance company? Like,
I'm not 100% sure. They did create a new framework called AIUC1, which they compare to SOC 2 for AI, specifically AI agents. I do have some questions on that. Like, I'll be interested to see how it intersects with ISO 42001. They actually have a mapping that they described. And they also, do some things that I've seen in a lot of different frameworks, like basically saying like intellectual property risk, like don't violate other people's intellectual property. It's like,
right,
okay, but it's a little trickier than that. It's a
right.
little more detailed than that, and no one really knows what that means. So having some actionable guidance is key, and they do in certain areas. I think we're seeing a multiplication of frameworks when it comes to AI specifically. I've talked about obviously 42001 high trust AI security. Now that we've got AIUC1, I'll be interested to see if auditing firms will be certifying companies against this because that'll be interesting. Potentially a new line of business for the auditors. So I could see that happening.
Yeah, and like I'm looking at the standard right now. So we have data and privacy, security, safety, reliability, accountability, and society. Like these are major pillars of AI governance.
Yeah.
And the technical contributors to it are MITRE, PwC, Stanford, Google Cloud, MongoDB, some like major players um, in the industry. Like I'm looking forward to it. I'd love to have a talk with one of these guys. Maybe we can arrange that for the next live so we can talk about it.
That's actually a good point. I did connect with the CEO on LinkedIn, so I do have his deets in that regard. So yeah, potentially we'll get him on to talk about it. That could
Nice.
be
And
that could be
one
good.
of the issues with not necessarily high trust, but like any auditing or certification or assessment body, a lot of times they end up lagging behind, right? So like a
Yeah,
traditional SOC 2
yeah.
may not have the controls in there um, that an assessor understands to put their commentary in to actually assess the entity in question, right? So I really appreciate this. It really provides a path forward for those companies either embracing technology um, to improve their existing operations, create new revenue streams, uh, and create. I think I said it before. Creates a path forward for them. Like this is really good. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hats off to you, AIUC1.
It is a little bit of a mouthful. Although once you know what the acronym stands for, you know what the company does. There's no
Right.
question about that. So very clear. Cool. Well, anything else, Steve, to discuss?
You are neck deep in AI everything all the time. So I wanted to ask you, and I'll start asking you this from now on. This will be like the ending question from me
Mm,
to you. Since the last time we spoke, which was a month ago, have
yeah.
you seen anything that stands out to you regarding AI? It can be government, it can be personal, it can be just industry related. Like what stands out to you in the past 30 days as good, bad, indifferent, whatever?
Oh, that's a good question. I've definitely seen in my, in terms of my information feed, so to speak, my personal information diet. I have a lot of business podcasts and blogs and things like that. And the AI bros are going hard right now in the business world. Talking about how you can build businesses using AI agents and things like that. And I try to be at the leading edge of technology myself, and some of these implementations are can be a little bit challenging to operationalize. And once you have a lot of stuff automated like I do, automations break, and yeah, it requires some maintenance. So we're not quite at the singularity yet. I don't think we're there. And I mean, I don't mind some good hype, but you know we're not there yet. So yeah, with that, Steve, appreciate you jumping on, and thanks for everyone who listened. And we will be back next month.